Hi, I hope you are so well. My name is Jen and today I thought I'd talk about how I try and maintain a positive, strong and healthy mindset when it comes to dealing with the day-to-day demands of living with type 1 diabetes. So, what's the link between the mind and type 1 diabetes? Well, this is by no means a pity party, but dealing with the demands of type 1 day to day can be a lot. And don't get me wrong, I believe I live a very fulfilled and happy life. And for the most part, I get to do all the things I want to do. But that is because I spend a lot of my day and a lot of my energy planning, preparing and second guessing the myriad things that can happen when you live with type 1 diabetes, a so-called invisible illness that is far from invisible in my mind. It's an autoimmune condition governed by numbers, blood sugar levels mostly, but my hormones and all the things that I do on a day-to-day basis, like sleep, food, drink, exercise, stress, they all play a part and they're all going to impact that number that I get on the blood glucose meter. I have to try and foresee these hurdles and guess exactly how my body is going to behave with that cocktail of variables there, and that, by the way, is no consistent formula, and try as best I can to keep my blood sugar levels within a safe range while all of this is going on. And sometimes that can feel like an endless marathon. So it's not easy, but I'm a pretty positive person and I've come a long way in 22 years of living with type 1 diabetes. So I thought today it might be useful if I share some of the tips and tricks that I personally use to maintain that strong and healthy outlook. As ever, this is just me sharing what's helping or has helped me with my condition. One of the charming traits of type 1 is how non-prescriptive it is, how much it changes every day, and also how unique it is from person to person. These tips may not help you right now, they might be useful in the future, or they may not work for you at all, but it's just me sharing my thing, okay? Also, don't change anything without consulting a medical professional, etc., because I am certainly not one of those. The first tip that worked for me is to let go of the idea of perfection. I've talked a lot on my blog before about the strict parameters we're placed under in the type 1 club, all the boxes and the target ranges and the numbers, the very narrow parameters of what it means to be a good diabetic, terrible term. But this condition, hormones are so much a part of it and your body just doesn't behave in that way, and I just personally think it's an impossible mountain to think you're going to get through life without a single hypo. I have them weekly, sometimes daily, but that's not to say I'm not doing absolutely everything I can to prevent them as much as possible. If the numbers aren't going to plan, the last thing you should be doing is getting frustrated with yourself. For most people, this will then raise the cortisol level, which is the stress hormone, which for a lot of people will then raise your blood sugars even further, and you're at risk then of getting into that vicious cycle of high blood glucose, stress, even higher blood glucose, even more stress, and that's just not fun. Life is stressful enough without adding all that pressure on top around diabetes management. It's a full-time job on top of your full-time job. So my personal outlook is, Jen, do your best, try your hardest, but don't stress when the numbers don't go exactly to plan, because you've got to live your life, hun. I've also done the whole wrap yourself in cotton wool, never go out, don't drink, only eat certain foods, and I still didn't avoid hypos. I find that the more fun and joy I have in my life, whatever that may mean for you, the more I experience things and I'm out in the world, the less significant the odd rogue number feels. On that note, my second point is don't be afraid to acknowledge when things aren't working. If you've let go of the idea of perfection, you've let go then of the pressure, the crazy pressure to be a perfect diabetic. What does that even mean? Life is fluid, it's ever changing, the demands of life change week to week, month to month, year to year, so it stands to reason that with a condition like this, the demands of diabetes might change or evolve over time too. It's not always easy to spot when this is happening, because a lot of the time, personally, I'm just dealing with the number that's in front of me, correcting, adjusting, doing whatever I need to do for it, and then moving on with my day. But if you can step back and see that things maybe aren't quite working or there are patterns there, then acknowledging that this is happening is great, because then it means you can take action. I personally believe that listening in and being more present with my diabetes is no bad thing. It means I'm taking control over my condition and my long-term health. That's really empowering, and it means that I can hopefully live well instead of just existing with diabetes, feeling rubbish and getting frustrated. Just a little change of battery there, guys. Obviously waffling on far too much. So my next point is a big one, and also probably quite an obvious one. It should have maybe been my first point, but that's don't ignore your diabetes. Sounds obvious. I also know when you're in those ruts, it's so much easier said than done. You just want to forget that this has ever happened to you. But my advice to myself is always don't pretend it's not happening, because it will be so much worse if you do. As mentioned, I think there is this fine line between, hey, yeah, I've got this thing that I live with, but it's fine, and actually this is quite a demanding chronic condition that needs to be taken seriously. I'm so aware that things could be worse, but that doesn't mean that life with type 1 is easy. How apt my type 1 diabetes making itself known when I'm in the middle of a very serious conversation with you guys. Just fixing high blood glucose there, we'll be fine. Okay, I'm saying all this with the experience of having previously completely left my diabetes behind. When I was at university, I just disengaged with my condition. It wasn't a conscious rebellion at all, but it was more a reflection of my general state of health and well-being, which wasn't great at the time. And I just, yeah, completely disengaged with my type 1 diabetes. And actually, a few years later, that did catch up with me, and I got my diagnosis of background retinopathy, which is potential eye damage. And that's the whole reason I started writing and talking about living with type 1 in a public space, I guess. It's why I started my blog. It's why I'm here talking into this camera by myself right now, all these years later. So I have been through that bit where, not consciously, but I certainly didn't give my diabetes much attention at all. Over the years, and it takes time, I think, figured quite a lot of stuff out when it comes to my body and my health and my well-being. I give my body so much love and respect now, which I never did before, and part of that for me is prioritizing my health and paying attention to my condition, because as discussed, that then hopefully in the long term is going to make me brighter, healthier, happier in general. Like most people, I lead a busy life and I like saying yes to things, but then I say yes to everything and I end up getting burnt out and my diabetes starts to suffer, or my diabetes then makes me suffer. It's a bit of a chicken and egg situation, I think. My diabetes and my general health and well-being are so inextricably linked that if one is off, the other one will soon follow. And it might not be a huge dramatic situation, but I can sort of start to see that my blood sugar stability is having a wobble, and then I might not be sleeping so well, so I'm more tired, so I'm less likely to want to exercise, and it's this catalyst of things that suddenly starts to feel very overwhelming as I try and catch up and get back on top of everything. And as I say, when I disengaged with my condition, it wasn't even a conscious thing. I didn't suddenly one day decide that I was going to ignore my diabetes completely. I just definitely wasn't in the place where I was giving it what it required, and my health did then suffer. So for me now, I know that long-term goal and I can see the bigger picture as opposed to right here and right now, and I will sometimes say no to preserve and protect my health, which leads me on to pick your battles, I guess. I don't want to say battles so much. I have at times been very defiant about doing exactly what I want to do and not taking my diabetes into consideration at all when making those decisions. But I have now realized that the more I acknowledge it and let it into my life, own up to it, and I guess to an extent make friends with it, the easier those few sacrifices have become. Like every relationship, you do have to compromise, and there are certain compromises that I make that I know are going to benefit me and my condition, but they might not be compromises that you're willing to make. Everyone has different priorities in terms of the way they live their life and the way that they are willing to allow diabetes into that. Exercise, for example, is something I have come to enjoy. I don't set myself any strict routines or make sure I go to the gym 4 times a week. I run sometimes. Sometimes I'll go for months without running. Sometimes I'll do yoga. Sometimes I'll go to a gym class. I just make movement part of my life, and I do it more for my mind than my body, but also just for the benefits I know I'm going to get with my diabetes. That slightly increased insulin sensitivity and just a more strong and positive mindset. Food choices are another one. I'm quite lucky in that I really like vegetables. I really enjoy a Mediterranean style, paleo-based-ish diet. I eat lots of colours, lots of flavours, lots of natural, unprocessed foods. But every now and then, I want to put my face in a tub of ice cream. So when I do go for that, I feel more prepared and equipped to analyse my blood sugars over the next few hours to deal with the fallout. It would be wonderful if I could eat pizza every night and not worry about the blood sugar roller coaster that I personally get from something like pizza. So sometimes I will have the pizza. If I'm out with my friends and we're in a pizza restaurant and we're having a lovely time, I will absolutely go for it. But it's about knowing when it's going to take a bit of extra work and diabetes is going to take up a bit more space because of the choices I've made. Other times I might completely dismiss that side of the menu and choose something else because I want an easy ride. Another thing I've conceded to is just generally being a bit more organised when it comes to the logistics of diabetes management. I used to leave my prescription until the very last minute, but that would just cause me huge amounts of stress when I was running across town, trying to get to the pharmacy before it shut, knowing I was down to my last test strip. None of this is about saying diabetes has won. I'm making a little bit of room for diabetes in my life, and actually I found it super empowering to take back control in that way, because these are my choices on my terms. On that same note, and these tips are just flowing seamlessly together, it's almost like I planned it. My next tip is for me to prioritise sleep. That may sound boring, I may sound like a nana. I mean, I am 31, but sleep for me is the foundation of all health and well-being, and my general demeanour, my approach to decision making, and my ability to handle the demands of this condition. I also find that if I'm getting consistently decent sleep, my general level of blood sugar stability is much better, and it doesn't mean that I don't go out late. I live in London, there's a lot going on after hours, and it doesn't mean that I don't sometimes stay up late watching yet another episode of Mrs. Maisel when I know I should be in bed, but just generally on the whole, I make sure I'm prioritising sleep. For me, it's just worth it. Over the past year or two, I have developed a pretty sexy sleep routine. It involves earplugs, an eye mask, lavender spray. I've got a 15-minute meditation podcast that helps me get to sleep. Sometimes I'll take melatonin, which is a natural sleep trigger. I mean, and she wonders why she's single. Booze, unfortunately, will not help your sleep. It's a sedative, so it will get you off to sleep, but it's not going to give you that good quality sleep. And that's not to say I don't drink, because I do, but I just make sure that if I've had an evening on the booze, the next few nights will be booze less, to make sure I'm just keeping that consistent level of decent shut-eye. Next tip, celebrate the victories, even the small ones. It's a jungle out there and you've got a lot on your plate, honey. So when things go your way, or you catch that hypo in time, or you just make it through a week without anything dramatic happening, or you've made it through a really frustrating diabetes day, acknowledge that and give yourself some credit. Unfortunately, type 1 diabetes makes itself known when things aren't going quite right, so it can be easy to focus on those moments and forget the millions of decisions you're making, often without conscious thought, just to keep going. This condition requires constant self-management. It never goes anywhere and the goalposts are constantly shifting. So to be able to handle that and deal with that and the demands of the rest of your life, you deserve to give yourself some credit. You are doing amazing, you are a rock star, even if you don't feel like it. My next tip is something I've learnt slowly over the years, and that's don't be afraid to ask for help. I used to completely brush off the fact that I had diabetes and deal with it all alone. But I've been in enough near-miss, slightly scary situations over the years to realise that sometimes I do need to ask for help. I've had to ask friends for help, I've had to ask complete strangers for help when I've been minutes from passing out. And that's okay. I mean, not ideal, you don't want to do that every day, But sometimes it's not even help you need, it's just a bit of understanding from the people around you that maybe sometimes you do need an extra 10 minutes or maybe an emergency juice. But that understanding has to come from you. You have to be willing to open up every once in a while, particularly with the people that you spend a fair bit of time with. My friends and my employers, they all know I have type 1 diabetes. It doesn't make me a failure. It doesn't mean I'm not coping. I actually prefer it because it takes all that pressure off of having to deal with this all alone. And talking about my life with diabetes also helps me extract some of that swirling madness of all the things that are going on all the time with this condition. The diabetes online community has been an incredible source of support and just that feeling of not being alone. I think it's opened up a whole world for people because this condition can be quite isolating. And social media is not for everyone, or certainly you need to find the people that you feel comforted by as opposed to people that maybe you feel intimidated by, or maybe their outlook on their diabetes management doesn't quite align with yours. That's okay. This is a completely personal condition. But there are people out there, and mostly if your friends and family are decent, they want to be able to help you. They want to understand what you're going through. There's certainly no British stiff upper lip over here. I'm an oversharing stream of consciousness anyway. Hello, YouTube channel. But it has taken time for me to build up that confidence. And now if I'm having a rubbish day and I feel disgusting because my sugars are off, I will tell my friends. And it's not about burdening them. It's also a sense of safety for myself, and hopefully I'm the same to them for different reasons. It's just part of the messiness of life. I think as women in particular, that's a massive generalization, we do tend to feel the pressure of keeping it all together, and we also tend to look out and look after other people before we look after ourselves. But for me, sharing that load hasn't made me any less of a success in anyone's eyes, particularly not mine, and I think it's a healthy thing to do. Last tip is try and look at the positives. I know, this one's very annoying. I'm not pretending this is fun for anyone, but I also think that outlook is a very powerful tool, and having that sense of perspective as much as possible has helped me stay really positive when it comes to type 1 diabetes and also generally in life. I was having this chat the other day with someone, and she said, she sells seashells. She said she's not sure she would give her type 1 back if she had the choice. I think that's an amazing view to have. I'm not sure I'd go that far. I think if someone came along and was like, this all ends now, I'd be like, yeah, great, thank you. But I certainly wouldn't give back the years I have lived with type 1. I've lived with it for 22 years, and it's really developed me as an individual. It's made me who I am. It's given me a greater understanding of what other people might be going through. It's also given me incredible opportunities. A huge part of my media career has indirectly been helped by me writing and speaking about my life with type 1. There's also the diabetes community. I've met some of the most incredible, inspiring, compassionate and positive people as a result of this condition. It definitely also makes me more interesting. I'm pretty basic otherwise, so yeah, I'll give you that one, diabetes. I know it can be so hard to see any positives at all, especially when you're in that frustrating cycle and things feel overwhelming. So this tip might not be relevant to you right now, and that's fine. I've certainly been in that place once or twice. But for me, my diabetes currently isn't going anywhere, so how I choose to view it is down to me. And for the most part, when I have the headspace, I am willing to see that there are some positives to this condition. Okay, that's everything. I realised those tips might be quite broad and quite general, but I did that on purpose because I feel like specific goals are for specific people at specific times. Those tips that I've just gone through stay relevant for me over time, and they're much easier to stick to. They don't set me up for any kind of failure. It's more about outlook and perspective. So I hope they've helped you in some way. If I've missed anything major, or if you've got anything that particularly helps you stay on top of everything that type 1 diabetes is throwing at you, do let me know in the comments below. Sharing is caring, and we are all in this together. So yeah, the more the merrier. Like, we need all the help we can get. I do hope you've enjoyed this video. Please give it a thumbs up if you have, and don't forget to subscribe. I will see you very soon. Take care. You are amazing. Don't forget that.